Y también con la señora Jeanne, y no siempre era la misma persona. Thank you so much for being here today to help us celebrate the life of my mother, Jeanne, who wasn't always the same person. That's is my sister Roxy. Ella es mi hermana Roxy. And the lovely lady next to her, y la dama muy bonita que está a su lado en la camisa amarilla in the yellow shirt, is my Aunt Yvette, my mother's sister. Ella es mi tía. This is one of those days you don't ever want to have to do. Ese sí ha sido uno de esos días que realmente nunca quise ver, pero ni modo, es parte de la vida. Unfortunately, it is part of life. But we got a whole bunch of stuff that we're going to do. Hopefully, it'll all work. And if it doesn't, that's okay. You just have fun with what you have. No importa si pasa todo lo que tenemos planeado, porque lo mejor de la vida es saborearlo todos los días. You need to taste life every day. No dejan pasar las cosas, hay que hacer las cosas hoy. Don't let things go for another day. Do it today. She wants to thank you all being here today to help celebrate this woman who supported the arts and culture so much here at Lakeside.
Yeah.
Mi nombre es María de la Luz Mendoza Huerta o Maestra Lucy. Soy la regidora de Cultura del Gobierno Municipal y me siento muy honrada de estar junto a personas que aman a Jijic, que aman las tradiciones, que aman a su pueblo y que se entregan. Verdaderamente podemos decir que son hijos adoptivos de esta región de Chapala. En su honor, yo le ofrecería 1 minuto de aplausos.
She's asking for a minute of applause in memory of señora Jeanne. She is the maestra Luz Mendoza. Thank you guys, and thank you for only one horse. And also, we send that applause to the band, La Banda. Gracias, muchachos.
Esta canción siempre fue una canción favorita de mi mamá. Of the Guadalajara Reporter. Este señor es el señor Michael Forbes, uno de los dueños del mejor periódico en México en inglés, The Guadalajara Reporter.
Hello everybody, and thank you everybody for turning out for Jeanne. Many of you probably don't know me or my face, but I am actually the editor of the Guadalajara Reporter, and I was Jeanne's editor for the last 14 years. I like to keep myself in the background, and when you've got someone like Jeanne out there, you can keep yourself in the background. Let me tell you something. When she was writing the community and cultural news in Guadalajara for the Reporter, and she worked in a small newsroom with 4 or 5 people, and she churned out copy on an electric typewriter, which became a manual typewriter when the lights went out, which was frequent. And it was a very male-dominated newsroom, and she was the center of attention, which she liked a lot. At that time, I wasn't her boss, so we didn't fight. And she was very good to me, and we developed a good relationship. I loved the buzz she gave off, but life was there to be lived, and that we weren't real celebrities, but we could pretend to be celebrities. She'd been in Mexico much longer than me, and I was amazed at the number of people she knew in Guadalajara, the Americans there. And you have to remember that that community, when she was there living and working, was bigger than Lake Chapala. That, of course, has all changed, and it's now much, much bigger here than in Guadalajara. But she was the center of attention in Guadalajara at that time as well, when she was writing for the Reporter. So things didn't change much when she switched to Lakeside. She really managed to get around that community. And I remember I learned quite a lot from her then, because she taught me that writing small things about individuals doing things in the community is very important. It's not always just about the big story. It's about the little people doing little work that may not seem that important, but at the end of the day actually is. She loved Mexico, and she loved the culture, and she loved the way of life here. And I think it sometimes made her forgive this country a bit. I remember one story she told me, that when she first, on her first day in Guadalajara, she was going past a taco stand near the Minerva, and she said they saw people being shot, someone being shot at the taco stand. And I remember telling this story, but she told me it in a way that made me think, well, this is her outlook, you know. If you're going to live in Mexico, you got to take the good stuff and you got to take the bad stuff. And she was like that in her columns, in the intros to her columns. I mean, a lot of people complain about church bells at 5 o'clock in the morning, but her attitude was, who the hell are we to try and stop something that's been going on for centuries? And she didn't stop there. She'd add to that. She'd say, and we won't stop them either. I also, one thing I'd like to mention is that I saw in the mid-80s her talents as a singer. And I don't know whether in the last few years she did much singing, but man, could she belt out a tune. She really could. And if in another universe, she could have been pretty famous at that if she'd worked at that. I bet you if she's like with the Angels now, she's having a good sing along with them, I'm sure. The paper, when she left the paper for the first time, the paper was poorer for her absence, because she had such drive and such determination and perseverance in getting the job done. So when I took over the paper in the mid-90s and found out that she'd relocated here to Ajijic, it was really a no-brainer to bring her back on board, because I knew what I could get out of her. I knew that she would come up with the goods, always. Every Monday morning, she was the first one to call me, bright and breezy. She was the first one to get her copy into the inbox in my email. She was, when the story was, just had to be a very straight little story. She was very good at that, and I appreciated that, and I think the community appreciated that. It's a gossipy community. And she always tried to keep me abreast of all the salacious gossip that was going on. But one thing I respected her for, that she was fair and balanced in her writing, and never tried to side with one side or another, and always wrote something that even if she believed, if I wanted her to write it or someone else wanted her to write it, she would always write it, and write it fairly. And I appreciate her for that, and I think that was very, very good of her. I learned a lot from Jeanne, I must admit. I learned a lot about living one's life to the full and looking on the bright side of life. There's a little song there that's quite nice about that. Which she always seemed to do, especially with me. And I appreciate that. This year we're going to be marking the 50th anniversary of the Guadalajara Reporter. And she's going to be very, very sorely missed at those celebrations. But she will very, very much be written in as a very important part in the history of this community newspaper. Having her with us, and we will miss her very, very much.